Hello and welcome to episode 183 of AviaDev Insight Africa, the podcast offering a window to the world of African aviation with your host, John Howell, CEO and founder of AviaDev Africa. As we all know so well, the recovery of travel has been impacted by a lack of coordination in terms of entry requirements, and in many places, a lack of digitisation generally of the travel process. But this may well be changing. On November the 1st, SITA announced that in a bid to support the recovery of global travel and tourism, they're going to make their digital travel declarations solution freely available to all governments globally. This is set to allow passengers to share required travel and health documentation with governments ahead of travel, streamlining the entire process. So today, that's what we're going to discuss. And to discuss this in greater detail and what it means also for Africa's aviation recovery, I'm delighted to say that I am joined by Jeremy Springall, Vice President of SITA's Border Management business, SITA at Borders. So Jeremy, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, John. I'm really pleased to join you.
Great. Well, let's start straight away with this solution and the announcement. It's actually this week. We're recording on the 4th. So what issue does the solution set out to solve and how exactly does it work?
As you just said, I think the travel and aviation industry has been one of the hardest hit from the pandemic. So we're beginning to now start to see some signs of recovery. So in Africa at the moment, we're around 64% of flights compared with 2019 levels. But in order for governments to have the confidence to fully reopen borders and to restart travel, they obviously need and want to understand who's traveling into their country and if they've been tested or fully vaccinated. At the moment, a lot of the way that's working is that it's a very manual process. And across Africa and indeed the world, there's a lot of manual documentation checks going on in terms of testing or vaccinations. And that's really not going to be sustainable as passenger numbers start recovering. Research from IATA, as example, are suggesting that passenger processing times have almost doubled compared with where they were in 2019. So, it's going to be a big challenge if we continue to manually process documentation in that way. And therefore, we need to be able to automate and digitize that as much as possible. So as an industry-owned organization at SITA, we've been working with airlines, airports, and governments really since the start of the pandemic to work on solutions that are going to help control the virus and recover the industry. And as you said, one of the key areas around that is around digital travel declaration. And so what this is really building off the expertise that we've had over many, many years in e-visa and travel authorization solutions. We've developed a digital travel declaration solution for governments, and it's been live now for around a year. And it's been very successful. And what it does is enable passengers to complete an online or a mobile health declaration. They can upload their health and travel documentation, so their vaccination certificates or test certificates, and they can do that before travel. And then they can receive a confirmation back from the government to confirm they've submitted their declaration and all the required documentation. So that's going to help simplify the process for both the passenger and for the government. It can also integrate with the airline check-in process and the government border control systems. So overall, it can help sort of streamline that overall passenger process as we move forward. And this is very much in line with what ICAO are recommending is being implemented now by all countries around the world. So I think, certainly from an industry perspective, what we wanted to do was be able to ensure that these solutions were available to all governments, particularly, around the world. And I think Africa, is a great market for this. And I think these solutions can really help the recovery of the industry much more faster. And therefore, we're really pleased to be able to offer this to governments on a free of charge basis to really help with that industry recovery.
Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, obviously to offer it free of charge, and it is the only way forward is obviously digitizing and automating as much of this as possible, because we've seen the stories, we've seen the pictures of the queues at borders at the moment, and it's that lack of joined up thinking. But they've got to obviously be able to trust the system. So let's talk a little bit about sort of interoperability. How does this solution work with other solutions that are out there on the market? Because there are lots of travel passes like IATA's travel pass, but there are other options as well out there as well. How does this work and communicate with those?
So we've been working very, very closely really for some time with those other travel pass schemes. So IATA travel pass, AOK pass, Commons pass, as well as the government issued COVID certificates, which I think are increasingly becoming, really important as well. And what that enables us to do is to digitally verify that documentation that is being submitted. So quite often we'll be uploaded a digital certificate, and we need to be able to verify that online, and we'll do that through those schemes. The other key component is the solution also needs to interoperate with the existing passenger and border processes that are already in place. So a lot of these new things like the travel passes are new, but we also need to integrate with the existing process, such as check-in and those border control systems. And I think that's going to help really simplify the way that this moves forward, and therefore is going to help with that industry recovery as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and that makes a lot of sense. So just sort of taking a slight step sideways, or because it will be an issue that you're obviously dealing with the rollout now of this. Obviously you've worked and SITA has worked really closely with the industry and with governments as well. Why have we had such a fragmented approach to the acceptance of travel documentation, especially from a sort of digitized perspective? Was it a lack of trust of the digitization process? And do you see this as changing? Are people now saying, look, this is the only way, we trust it, if these safeguards are in place, we know that we need to get people moving again, and this is the only way forward?
Yeah, I think right from the start, I think it was recognized that the only way we were going to do this is to move to a digital route, but that was always going to take some time. And I guess in looking back, I think the response to COVID could probably have been a lot more joined up and a lot more collaborative. But many governments were needing to act very quickly to control the spread of the virus and obviously to stop it reaching their country. And therefore they introduced their own rules, very, very rapidly to close down borders or to, control travel into their countries. And therefore we've sort of seen the adoption of many different types of schemes that are working. I think over the last 18 months since the start of the pandemic, the industry has come together. It's really good to see. I think there's a lot of good work done by organizations like the World Travel and Tourism Council and other industry bodies like the Good Health Pass Collaborative, which have started to introduce some good common standards around health passes and health credentials. And we're now seeing some good work, I think, being done by OCAO, who I think are now really leading in the development of a lot of the standards going forward. And they've started incorporating those health credential standards with a lot of the other work they were doing pre-pandemic in areas such as digital travel credentials and visual digital seals. And I think, therefore, probably over the next 24 months, it's going to take still some more time, but we're going to start to see a consolidation of those standards around health credentials and the way that it's going to work. I think that has to happen. We can't continue with many different governments around the world having different approaches and different schemes. It doesn't work for the industry. So we have to get to that common approach.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, like you said at the beginning, if we're having problems with congestion and long queues now, if you get that recovery back to 2019 levels and beyond, it's just not feasible. People simply won't be able or be willing to travel if they have bad experiences. So, okay, well, let's move to the African market. And, we know that obviously SITA has a great footprint, lots of customers in the African market. And we also know that many airports on the continent are actually quite small airports. A lot handle less than 1 million passengers a year. So therefore, they don't necessarily have the scale, and of course have been hit incredibly hard by a lack of revenue during the pandemic, because of course they haven't had the aeronautical fees flowing into the business. So how do you assist your African partners to digitize when there isn't necessarily sort of a huge amount of capital out there for them? Have you kind of tweaked your offering to deliver something more specific to the smaller airports?
Yeah, I think if you look at the African market and small regional airports generally around the world, I think it's really important that any solutions need to be low cost and they need to be scalable. So, from a commercial perspective and a technical perspective. And therefore, I think being able to offer things like the digital travel declaration free of charge in Africa, I think is really key. And I think what we're very much going to see is, in Africa in particular, is that I think regional travel is going to be one of the first areas to recover before we start seeing lots of international travel going on. And those airports, as you say, are relatively small, and they're going to face some of the biggest challenges in terms of capacity, in terms of how do they manage these sort of situations. So I think moving towards more of a digitization and automation is going to be really important for them. And therefore, you're right, we do need to sort of offer solutions that are right for that market. As you said, SITA's got a lot of really strong heritage in regional airports across Africa. Many of our solutions are really designed around this market. And therefore, as we introduce opportunities to digitize the passenger process or airport operations, then I think actually moving towards that digitized process is going to support those regional airports very effectively. They can grow much faster, and they can do that at a much lower cost point compared with more traditional ways of working. So I think if we can get the solutions at the right price point in the first place, it's certainly going to help them go down the digital route.
Yeah, it's an opportunity, isn't it, to leapfrog the competitors, but also, you don't have a lot of those legacy things. And the other thing, actually, when I look at this from what you said before about it being, absolutely domestic and regional travel is recovering faster around the world. It actually gives those airports that have invested in this kind of technology a competitive advantage, because the traveler, if they know they're going to have this experience, they may well pick to travel through that airport if they know that that it's obviously got a solution that's going to make their life easier. So I think that's something that definitely shouldn't be overlooked as well. And what about some examples of solutions you've deployed in Africa that have made a difference? I think you did something in Addis in Ethiopia. Am I correct?
Yeah. I mean, we've been operating in Africa for I guess over 60 years now, and over that time we've done lots of pioneering projects. So we delivered the first common use check-in systems in Africa, first baggage management systems, a lot in air ground communications, airport management. So I think a lot of strong heritage in that space. I guess a couple of really good recent examples. So for Ethiopian Airlines, we've been implementing a new drop and fly baggage systems. That's at Bole International Airport, and that enables passengers to use their mobile phone to have much more of a more touchless, near touchless experience at the airport around bag drop. So I think that's a really good example. In Gambia, for the Civil Aviation Authority, we've been implementing quite a wide range of different solutions there, including our next generation common use check-in system, which we call SITA Flex. And that's going to be a really important solution for the market. So again, it enables that much more touchless check-in process, much more mobile enabled and cloud enabled. So again, we can reduce the cost footprint of these sort of solutions for these regional airports. So I think that those are two really good examples.
And what about sort of looking forward to new technologies that we can expect to see over the next couple of years coming through? Because traveler behavior has changed. What an airport requires has changed. A lot of things have changed, and you will obviously, you've always been pioneers of creating what's next. So what can we expect? And has this been driven by traveler behavior and what people are prioritizing now in the way when they travel? They're obviously very, they want to have a contactless experience, these kind of things. What can we expect?
Yeah, for me, I think the main developments are around mobile, biometrics and digital identities. So I think really those things are going to have a massive change. And a lot of that is being driven by the passenger. So the surveys that we've done, we undertake regular surveys of the market, really show that the passenger is really keen to use their mobile device and really keen to use biometrics where it can help improve their journey. So in the future, your face becomes your boarding pass, and we can really achieve that low touch point experience across the airport. So I think that's really, really key. Digital identities is the other piece that I think is going to be a big game changer for us. We're seeing ICAO have just launched the specification for digital travel credentials. And basically what that is a digital version of your passport on your phone. So you've got all of the passport information, your biographic and biometric information collected on your phone. And that's going to help really further digitize the passenger process, and make it much more easier for travelers to share data with governments, for example. So using that DTC. And what we're also likely to see is other forms of trusted digital identities being used for travel as well, and being used beyond travel. So again, using a trusted digital identity to booking for your hotel, or to use for other events while you might have traveled to your destination. And therefore, I think it's going to make it much, much easier for travelers to get that real seamless end-to-end experience, really, and make traveling easier, which is what we all want, really.
Absolutely. And just finally on that, were these things already coming? Obviously, you've been working on them, but quite often with new technology, a lot of the pushback that you get from anyone is, look, we're so busy, especially in aviation. It's a non-stop 24/7 business. And people say, look, I'd love to implement that, but it would mean shutting down. It would mean this, that, and the other. Have you seen an acceleration? Is that what's happened? And is that driven twofold? Is that driven by both the actual airports and the infrastructure themselves, and also the passengers as well? Or, do you put this down to an acceleration due to COVID? And is this now an opportunity for people to get on board to then be ready for the recovery?
I think you're right. I think we're definitely seeing that acceleration. I mean, many of these solutions have been discussed, within the industry for many years in terms of where we wanted to go. Pre-COVID, we were doing a lot of really good trials, and we were sort of in that innovation phase in this sort of space pre-COVID. And there are some really good examples of where digitalization, digital identities, and the seamless journey is really coming about. But it's definitely accelerated with COVID, and I think we're now moving away from just innovating to moving into full implementations now, because I think it's been recognized this is needed now. It's the only way the industry is going to recover. And so I think that's, that's really important. I think also, though, as we digitize more and we get to more of a digital process around the passenger experience, I think what we're also going to see is further opportunities, further areas that we can innovate in. So I think, it will drive more solutions coming to market over the coming years. I think going to revolutionize the way we work and the way we travel. So I think really exciting times, John.
Absolutely. I think one solution leads to another. I mean, you think about the African market, we always talk about things like M-Pesa, and mobile money was pretty much invented on the continent, and people are very mobile enabled. They don't necessarily all own a laptop, but everybody's got a smartphone, and that gives an advantage. It's that leapfrogging opportunity if you've got the right technology at the right time. And then obviously when you get to the airport, people are so digitally savvy, they are able to do that. You can't leave everyone else behind, but for those that do know how to do it, they'll have a more seamless experience, and that will encourage those who don't to actually get on board. I think that's the way I look at it.
I agree, and I think I think the fact that Africa has got that advantage, and the mobile, capacity that is there, I think is going to enable these digital technologies far easier in Africa. So, sometimes I think some of the traditional legacy solutions that have been around the world for many years are going to hold some countries back. But actually, I think it's a great opportunity for Africa. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, what a positive way to finish today's podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us, Jeremy. Really appreciate it. And for everybody out there in the audience, we will put the link to the paper on regional airport digitization in the show notes. So do have a read of that. It's a really nice short PDF. And that's available for download now. We've got loads more insightful podcasts planned over the coming weeks. I'll be going to Dubai Air Show, where I'll be picking up plenty more interviewees. And once again, thank you all for joining us as we continue to support African aviation to innovate, unite and thrive at this particularly difficult time, but hopefully the beginning of a new dawn for our wonderful industry. If you did enjoy the episode, please do not hesitate to click that share button and send it to somebody in your network you think would benefit from having a listen. Don't forget to subscribe as well, and leave us a review in the App Store would be fantastic as well, so we can be found by even more people. So thank you so much, and we'll see you all for the next episode very soon. Bye-bye.